The sun was sinking low over the dusty plains, casting a golden glow across the small ranch that Clara had called home for the past few years. She moved quietly around the yard, feeding the chickens and checking the water troughs, her mind busy with the work that never seemed to end. Since her husband had passed, the ranch had become her life, and she had learned to rely only on herself. The wind whispered through the tall grass and the distant hills looked peaceful, but Clara knew the land could be unforgiving if one was not careful. She had just finished carrying a bucket of water back to the barn when she heard a faint sound, almost lost in the wind. At first she thought it was the rustling of the grass, but then she heard it again, a weak, rasping call. She paused, listening intently. The voice was soft, strained, but there was a hint of desperation in it. Water, just a little water. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She had learned over the years that travelers sometimes wandered onto her land. Most were harmless, but some brought trouble. She glanced toward the fence line, her eyes scanning the horizon. There, moving slowly and unevenly, was a man. He seemed to be leaning heavily on a walking stick, or perhaps just struggling to stand. His clothes were torn, dusty, and stained, and his face was pale with exhaustion. Clara could see the deep lines of pain etched into his features. She hesitated for a moment. She had learned caution the hard way, but the man's suffering was plain to see. Something in his eyes, a mix of pain and quiet pleading, made her step forward. "Hold on," she called softly. "I'll help you." The man's lips curled into a weak smile and he stumbled forward, raising a hand as if in thanks. I just need a little water," he whispered, his voice barely audible. His throat moved with difficulty, and Clara could see the strain in his chest as he struggled to breathe. Clara set down the empty bucket she had been carrying and ran to the well. She lowered the bucket, feeling the cool weight of the water as she brought it up. "Here," she said, holding it out to him. "Drink slowly." The man bent forward, taking the bucket with both hands. His fingers were rough and scratched, his nails coated in dirt from travel or work. He drank greedily, the water running down his chin, but he did not care. His eyes closed as he took in the life-giving liquid. Clara watched him carefully, her mind racing with questions. Who was he? Where had he come from? And what had caused him to be in such a state? When he had finished drinking, he leaned back, sighing deeply. "Thank you," he said, his voice steadier now. I don't know how long I could have lasted without this." He tried to stand, but his knees wobbled dangerously. Clara quickly moved to support him. "You're hurt," she said, guiding him toward the small cabin that served as her home. "You need to rest. Let me help you inside." The man nodded, though the effort made him wince. As she led him in, Clara noticed the bloodstains on his shirt and the ragged gash on his arm. His face bore bruises that spoke of a recent fight or accident. He was a man who had clearly been through a great deal. "Name's Jack," he said finally, his voice calm but tired. "Jack Callahan." "I'm Clara," she replied, keeping her tone gentle. "Clara Thompson. Come on, let's get you seated." Clara helped Jack to a chair by the fire. She retrieved clean water and a damp cloth, careful not to alarm him further. She cleaned the blood and dirt from his wounds as best she could, and bandaged his arm with strips of cloth she tore from an old sheet. Jack flinched slightly when she touched a particularly raw patch on his shoulder, but he did not complain. "You've had a rough journey," Clara said softly, her hand steady despite the concern she felt. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" Jack shook his head faintly. "Long road, trouble. Don't want to bring it here. I just needed some water, some rest." His eyes held a quiet strength despite the weariness. There was a sense of dignity in him, even in his weakened state. Clara found herself studying him, wondering about the life he had led and what had brought him to her doorstep. She brought him a bowl of warm broth, hoping to give him some strength. Jack accepted it gratefully, sipping slowly, and for a moment they were silent together, the only sound the soft crackle of the fire. Clara's eyes wandered around the room, taking in the simple furnishings. Life here was hard, but it was honest. She felt a flicker of curiosity about this man who had appeared so suddenly in her life. As Jack rested, he began to share small details of his life. He spoke of long days on the trail, herding cattle across the plains, of towns where he had found work and towns where he had faced hostility. His words were careful, measured, revealing enough to show experience but not inviting pity. Clara listened intently, realizing that this man was different from the strangers who occasionally passed through her land. There was a quiet bravery in him, and a gentleness that surprised her. The evening grew darker, and Clara could hear the soft hoot of an owl in the distance. Jack's breathing had slowed, and his eyes were heavy with exhaustion. Clara brought him a blanket and helped him lie down on a cot she had set up. He looked up at her, a faint smile on his lips. I don't usually sleep well around strangers," he admitted, "but I feel safe here." Clara felt a warmth in her chest she had not felt in years. She had been alone for so long, and yet, in the presence of this man, she felt something like hope. She nodded gently. "Rest, Jack, you've been through a lot. Tomorrow we can talk more if you want." Jack closed his eyes, letting the blanket cover him. For the first time in many nights, he felt a sense of peace. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for now he was safe, and that mattered more than anything. The wind howled softly outside, rattling the shutters, but inside the cabin, there was a quiet stillness. Clara sat near the fire, her thoughts drifting between the past and the present. She wondered what would become of this man, who seemed both strong and fragile at the same time. She could not deny a growing curiosity and perhaps something more. She had survived hard winters, lonely nights, and the challenges of running a ranch alone. But the arrival of Jack had stirred something unexpected in her heart. The next morning, the sun rose slowly, casting warm light through the cabin windows. Jack stirred, sitting up carefully. Clara brought him fresh water and breakfast, and for a moment they shared a simple silence. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a bond begins to form, a moment of understanding that words cannot fully capture. Jack looked at Clara with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you for everything," he said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Clara smiled, brushing back a stray lock of hair. "You would have managed," she said lightly, though inside she knew she would have worried endlessly if he had been alone. "But I'm glad you're here. Just take it one step at a time." As the day progressed, they worked together around the ranch. Jack moved cautiously, letting his wounds heal while Clara showed him how things worked. He learned quickly, his hands steady and sure despite his recent injuries. She found herself watching him as he handled the animals, repaired fences, and fetched water. There was a quiet strength in him that reminded her of the life she had once shared with her husband, but different, fresh, promising, and alive. By the evening, both were tired but content. They sat by the fire again, talking about small things, places Jack had traveled, the routines of ranch life, and the simple joys that made hard work worthwhile. Clara realized that Jack's presence had brought warmth into her home that she had not felt in years. And Jack, though weary from his journey, felt a sense of belonging he had not known in a long time. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Clara looked at Jack, who was cleaning his bandages, and felt a quiet stir in her heart. There was something about him, something honest and gentle, that made her wonder if perhaps life still had unexpected kindness in store. For Jack, the road ahead remained uncertain, but he had found a place of care and safety, and perhaps something more, a connection that might change both their lives forever. As night fell and the stars emerged over the plains, the ranch was silent except for the crackling fire. Clara and Jack settled in, each feeling the unspoken bond forming between them. It was the beginning of something neither had expected, a story of care, trust, and perhaps in time, love. And for now, that was enough. The morning sun rose over the plains, casting a warm glow across Clara's ranch. The air smelled of fresh earth and hay, and the soft clucking of the chickens filled the yard. Jack was awake early, sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee in hand. His arm was healing, but he moved carefully, aware of the tender bruises that still ached from his journey. He watched the horizon, thinking about how strange it was that he had ended up here, on a small ranch far from the towns and trails he had known for years. Clara appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with breakfast. "Morning," she said with a gentle smile. "Coffee's hot and I made some bread." Jack nodded, grateful for her care. "Thanks, Clara, it smells wonderful." They ate in companionable silence at first, each lost in their thoughts. Jack was no stranger to hard work or danger, but he had never known a place where someone's kindness felt so steady and reassuring. Clara, on the other hand, felt a warmth in her chest that she had not felt in years. There was something in Jack's presence that reminded her that life could still hold unexpected moments of joy. After breakfast, they stepped outside to tend to the ranch chores. Jack moved slowly at first, letting his body adjust to the day, while Clara guided him through the routines. They fed the animals, mended the fences, and checked the water supply. Jack's hands were steady, and Clara admired how skillful he was despite his weakened state. "You've handled cattle before, haven't you?" Clara asked, watching him work. Jack nodded. "Yes, for years. It's a good life if you know how to manage it." He paused, looking at the sun rising higher in the sky. "And it's honest. You can see the results of your work every day." Clara smiled. "Yes, that's something I love about this place. It's hard, but it's real." As the day went on, Jack shared small stories of his travels, careful not to dwell on the hardships. He spoke of the towns he had passed through, the people he had met, and the quiet moments when the open plains had felt like home. Clara listened, fascinated. There was a softness in his voice, a gentleness that contrasted with the rugged exterior he carried. By midday, they took a break under the shade of a large oak tree near the barn. Jack leaned back against the trunk, letting the cool breeze wash over him. Clara handed him a bottle of water. "Drink," she said. "You need to stay hydrated, especially after yesterday." Jack took a slow sip, feeling the cool water soothe his dry throat. "Thank you, Clara," he said quietly. "You didn't have to help me like you did. I could have stayed out there." He trailed off, shaking his head. "You would have struggled," Clara replied gently. "I couldn't just let that happen. You needed help." There was a pause between them, filled only by the sounds of the wind through the grass and the distant lowing of the cattle. Jack looked at Clara, studying her face. There was a quiet strength there, a determination that reminded him of the people he had admired in his travels. But more than that, there was kindness, a warmth that made him feel at home. The days passed quickly after that. Jack grew stronger, his wounds healing steadily under Clara's care. They continued working side by side, the routines of ranch life providing a rhythm that both found comforting. They mended fences together, guided the cattle to fresh pastures, and repaired the barn roof. Each task, though simple, was a chance to learn about each other. Jack admired Clara's skill and resilience, and Clara found herself drawn to Jack's quiet courage and steady presence. One afternoon, as they worked on the fence, Jack paused and looked out over the plains. "You know," he said, "I've seen a lot of land in my life, but this place, it feels different. It feels alive." Clara smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It is alive," she said softly. "It needs care, but it gives back more than you expect if you treat it right." Jack nodded. I think I understand that now, and not just about the land." He looked at her, and Clara felt a flutter in her chest. There was something unspoken between them, a growing connection that neither had expected. That evening, a storm rolled in from the west, dark clouds covering the sky. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, drumming against the roof of the cabin. Jack and Clara moved quickly to secure the animals and the barn, working together seamlessly. The storm raged and the wind howled across the plains, but inside the cabin they found shelter and warmth. As the rain fell outside, Jack sat by the fire, drying his clothes. Clara brought him a cup of hot tea, the steam curling into the air. "Here," she said. "Drink, it'll warm you up." Jack accepted it with a small smile. "You've taken good care of me," he said quietly. I don't know how to repay you." Clara shook her head. "No repayment needed. Just stay safe. That's enough." They talked late into the night, sharing stories and memories. Jack spoke of moments of loneliness on the trail, of nights under the stars, and of the people he had met along the way. Clara spoke of her husband, the challenges of running the ranch alone, and the small joys that made life worth living. Their conversation was easy, flowing naturally, each learning more about the other without pressure or expectation. Over the next weeks, Jack's presence became a comforting part of daily life. He helped Clara with the ranch work, and in turn she cared for him, making sure he healed completely. They laughed together, shared quiet moments, and slowly, the unspoken feelings between them began to grow. One morning as they worked in the fields, a group of rustlers appeared on the horizon. They were looking for cattle and had heard rumors of an unprotected ranch nearby. Jack's instincts kicked in immediately. He assessed the situation, moving quickly to secure the animals and prepare for any confrontation. Clara watched him, her heart racing. She realized that this man who had stumbled onto her ranch weeks ago was now her protector. His courage and skill were undeniable, and she felt a deep sense of trust in him. The rustlers approached, but Jack met them with calm authority. He spoke firmly, warning them to leave. They hesitated, and seeing the determination in his eyes, they eventually backed away. The danger passed, and the ranch was safe once more. Clara felt a mix of relief and admiration. Jack had proven himself not only brave, but also deeply loyal. That evening, after the tension had faded, they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, and the air smelled of wet earth and grass. Jack reached for Clara's hand, a simple gesture that carried more meaning than words could express. "Clara," he said softly, "I don't want to leave this place. I want to stay with you, if you'll have me." Clara's heart swelled. She had felt the same way for weeks, but had been unsure if Jack felt it too. She nodded, squeezing his hand gently. "Yes, Jack, stay. We'll face the days together as a team." A quiet joy settled over them, the kind that comes from finding a true connection after hardship. They knew the road ahead would have challenges, but together they felt ready. The ranch, the plains, and their shared life promised a future filled with hope, trust, and love. As night fell, the stars sparkled above the cabin, and the two sat side by side, hands entwined. Jack had found more than water on this ranch. He had found care, safety, and a love he had not known he was searching for. Clara had found someone who could share the burdens of life and the joys as well. Together they looked forward to the days ahead, knowing that their unexpected meeting had changed both of their lives forever. And so, the wounded cowboy had arrived seeking only water, but he had discovered something far greater. The love meant for him, found in the quiet strength and gentle heart of the widow who had given him shelter and care.